Hello everybody, today we're going to be doing a fun little software comparison between Photomatix and Aurora HDR. Stay tuned. Welcome back everybody, my name is Eric Marks with FindingMiddleEarth.com, and today we're going to be doing a fun little comparison between two of the biggest HDR photography softwares on the market. Photomatix and Aurora HDR, and these are going to be the pro versions of both. So for Photomatix Pro, Aurora HDR Pro, and at the end of this video and throughout, you'll kind of see my views on both of them. I don't really use HDR photography software as much anymore because I got my Wacom tablet, so I just have this little pin on a tablet that I can brush my brackets together where I have much more control. Basically, it's much more natural because I have very natural brush strokes versus just kind of throwing it into a software and letting it do all the work. Sometimes I will do that. By the way, I'll throw it into the software and then I'll kind of blend it into the original raw files. But I never just throw it into a software, let it spit out something, and then that be the final thing, because that kind of strips the fun out of it for me. I like to have a lot of control and make a lot of creative decisions when I do post-processing. And I'm not one of the crazy people, that post-process and just take all the sliders up to 100% and just, do something like otherworldly. I like to keep things very true to life, very much to how I saw it when I was there. Because obviously, when I was there taking the photo, I saw something about it that intrigued me to take the photo, and so I want to, convey that same feeling that I had to my viewers. And if I change the photo up completely, then that can't happen. So if you know me and you've seen any of my post-processing videos, most of my videos are in the middle of the night when it comes to post-processing. I always go through a few cups of hot tea, and I normally can't sleep very well whenever I'm going through these creative spells. And tonight is one of those times. I couldn't sleep. I got this creative juices flowing through me, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go post-process some photos, and I might as well make a video while I'm at it. So we're gonna go ahead and get started in a second. We're gonna basically just post-process a set of brackets in Photomatix, and then do the same thing in Aurora HDR. And through the whole process, I'll tell you some things that I like about, one of the softwares, things that I don't like. And also you can, make your own opinions from this video as well. And I'd love to talk about it in the comments and get your guys' opinions on all this stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into Lightroom and get started. All right, so as you can see here, this is a hotel in Disney World. It's the Animal Kingdom Lodge and Resort. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Disney World, but there are hotels and pretty much everything on their property is just grand. I mean, that's the best way to put it. Everything they do is just blown out of proportion, as you can see by this huge Christmas tree. I try to get as low to the ground as possible, as you can tell here, so that you can kind of see the true, just majesty of this Christmas tree. I mean, it's almost to the ceiling, and this is a very, very tall, very high ceiling. So this photo here you might have seen before. I've taken a vertical one. Let me go to my grid view here. This one is actually in my portfolio. And so I've already post-processed this one, and it's in my portfolio as we speak, but I've never post-processed one of the ones that I took in landscape, in horizontal mode here. So I figured I'd go ahead and do these brackets because I've never even touched them before. And we will go from there and do our post-processing. So, and again, remember, this isn't really a post-processing tutorial as much as it is just kind of comparing Photomatix with Aurora HDR. So if I go a little fast, you'll just forgive me, and I promise I'll make more post-processing videos. So first thing I just typically do is just check overall sharpness of the photo. So just checking to make sure everything is nice and sharp here. This set of brackets looks just a little blurry, so let's move on to the second set and see if that's any different. Let's see here. I might have bumped my tripod or something. Yep, so that one is nice and sharp. So always check, before you post-process a photo and go through all the trouble, always zoom in and make sure that, you have a sharp photo to begin with, because that's a very important piece. Okay, so it's going to be these three here. So I'm going to start by post-processing this one. And I do very minimal stuff whenever I am just starting these brackets. I really do most of the processing when I am done mixing the brackets. So let's go ahead and do the regular stuff, just basic housekeeping stuff, which is remove the chromatic aberration, enable profile corrections from the lens. We'll add just a tad bit of noise reduction. I'll do more of that later. And then just a tad bit of sharpening. Again, not much, but it's always good to do just a little bit so that the HDR softwares have a little bit easier of a time handling this. And then that's going to be really about it. I don't really do much else until later. So I'm going to select my first bracket and shift select my third bracket, and we'll do a sync. So that way we sync all the settings, synchronize. And now they've all had the same settings applied to them. And then I'll do an export here, and I'll export it. I have a preset called Pure Imagination, and what that basically means is that it sends it to a folder on my computer called Processing, and that's just kind of a temporary resting place for me to take the TIFF files, because these are raw files here that I'm editing. But whenever I take it into a photography software, or Photoshop, or HDR software, etc., I always export them as TIFFs, because you have so much data, and TIFFs can be such huge files. You have all the color data, you have all of the exposure data, and you have just as much data as you do in a raw file. So I always like to export the TIFFs, and I'll go over here to Bridge, and whoops, I clicked Lightroom Bridge, and here they are right here. Here are the three. So I'm going to select them here, and first we'll do Photomatix, okay? So let's just take these, and as you can see before I drag them, by the way, they're TIFF files. So you can see the name .tiff on all three of them. So we'll take all three of these, and we'll drag and drop them into Photomatix Pro, and we will merge them, yes. Okay. And then I'll do, yes, they were taken on a tripod. We will reduce the noise on the underexposed images only, and sure, why not? We'll go ahead and do reduce chromatic aberrations. The reason why I'm checking all these things is because I'm also going to check all these things in Aurora HDR, and we're just going to compare load times, right? We're going to see how snappy and how fast the processing is on each of these photos. We're going to do align and merge, okay? So I'm not going to do an actual stopwatch, but you can basically tell it's aligning, it's merging, and it's almost done. Reducing the chromatic aberration. It's telling me everything that it's doing. Keep in mind, Lightroom and Bridge are still open in the background, and that was actually pretty fast. I would consider that a pretty fast job, considering that the other two softwares in the background are still open and on the screen. So that's pretty impressive. So this is kind of the first rendition that it spits out at you, and you don't have to do this. These are all these presets over here, so you can click around and play with these. But again, we're just doing a quick comparison of the software. So I'm just going to mess around with, let's go to default, and I'm going to just mess around with some of the manual settings. We'll back that off a little bit. Add some tone compression, brighten everything up a little bit, lift the shadows. We'll add some detailed contrast, lighting adjustments. We'll play around with this. And these sliders affect each photo very differently, so there's not like a one-size-fits-all system that I use for every single photo. You're just gonna have to play around with it. We'll smooth out the highlights just a little bit, because there are definitely a lot of highlights in this photo. We're gonna bring down the white point pretty significantly, and we can bring up the exposure later, because there's a lot of hot spots all over the lights and the Christmas tree. So we'll bring it up a little bit. And then we'll bring up the gamma just a tad, brighten everything. I think everything is kind of biased towards the yellows right now, so we'll add some, cooled off blues into it just a little bit. All right, micro smoothing is basically, if you go all the way left, it makes everything very textury and gritty. It's kind of like clarity, the clarity tool in Lightroom. So I like to back that off a little bit, because that can sometimes introduce a lot of noise. So we'll smooth that up, and then I'll go ahead and just hit apply. So we'll apply all the, actually first, when I do all of these settings, let's do a zoom up here so we can check, detail and check everything. And so as you can see, when I zoom out and I zoom in Photomatix Pro, every setting that I've just done over here, it stays the same, right? I can see in real time as I'm zooming all of these changes that I've made to my photograph. I don't have to wait for the software to load anything. This is a 27-inch iMac screen that I'm working on. So it's a very, it's a lot of data for this software to load. And it does it, very well. The reason I'm having you pay attention to this, by the way, as I'm zooming in, is so that you can also compare to how Aurora HDR handles this same thing. Which I already know how it handles it, but you'll see in just a little bit the comparison. So anyway, I'm zooming in and everything is just perfectly fine. I'm not having to wait on any spinning wheels or any load windows or anything. It's doing great. So I'm happy with everything. Everything looks good. We'll go and hit apply. And from the time I hit apply, it'll say tone mapping. It's basically applying all of those settings to the finalized TIFF. Here it is. That was very quick. And it gives you this little window down here where you can do final contrast, color, sharpening. I always like to add just a little bit of medium sharpening to finish it off. There is mild, medium, and strong. So we'll do medium, and I'll hit done. And it's a very simple software. There's not like a whole lot to it, but I think the algorithm behind it is very good. So we'll go ahead and zoom in again before we save it with that medium sharpening, and you can see everything is great. Everything looks nice and sharp in the places that I want it, and I like it. There's no artifacting. None of the settings in Photomatix added any noise or anything that I didn't want. So we'll go ahead and save that. I'll just quit the software and do a save, and then it knows to save it in my processing folder as a 16-bit TIFF. So we'll do save. And there we go. So now I would just basically take all 4 of these, right? The 3 raw files and the Photomatix version, and I would normally go up here and I would open them in Photoshop into load files into Photoshop layers. And then I would continue my processing. I would take my Wacom tablet and I would brush all of the original raw files into the HDR version, and I would just make everything look very natural. Because right now I think this version here, the Photomatix version, looks very HDR-y, if that's a word. It's like it looks very very edited, I guess you could say. You can look at this and tell someone really messed with the colors, and a lot of this is taken away from the contrast. I think it's very flat and too saturated. So there's a lot of things wrong with it right now, in my opinion. So I would definitely make it look more natural. And of course, this Photomatix version is still very blown out in the highlights on all these lights up here, and it's blown out on the tree as well. So I would, of course, mix in the darker version of this. And as you can see, these are very toned down with the lights. So I would brush all of the details in, but that's for another video. So basically, I'm done. That was very quick. I'm very happy with how that handled my final exported photo from Photomatix. So now that Photomatix is closed, right, let's start over. Now let's work in Aurora HDR. I'm going to leave Lightroom open. I'm going to leave Bridge open in the background because I did the same thing with Photomatix. So let's just see how Aurora HDR handles this. And if you hear this, I don't know if you can hear this, but my 2-month-old daughter is screaming in the background, so my wife is probably real happy about that. She's out there getting her ready for bed and changing her for the night, because we try to get her on a schedule, and she doesn't like schedules because my 2-month-old daughter has my wife's personality, which is that of liking to be in control of lots of things. And my wife is amazing, by the way. I couldn't have asked for a better wife or a better daughter, but it's just funny that they have this same very stubborn type personality. And so we've been to the doctor and said, our daughter doesn't really seem to want to go to sleep on a schedule. She just kind of sleeps and eats when she wants to. And he's like, well, I feel sorry for you when she turns 2. She might be a little temper tantrum child. So anyway, she's screaming in the background, so if you can hear that, I apologize, but my wife's changing her and trying to get her fed and ready to go to bed. So, all right, so let's drag these 3 in to Aurora HDR Pro. And okay, so here's Aurora's window, right? So we have the same thing, alignment. We want to align, and we want to remove chromatic aberrations. So let's go ahead and do Create HDR. Now, I've used Aurora, okay, so I know that right off the bat, it will take quite a while to do this, unfortunately. So just to make it fair, Photomatix was full screen, so let's make Aurora full screen as well. Let's drag it out already Aurora is lagging a little bit, which is a little understandable, I guess, because it's in the middle of processing. So as soon as it's done processing and merging this HDR, I'll go ahead and make it full screen so everything's fair. So again, I'm not going to do a stopwatch comparison, but I can tell you that probably in the next 2 or 3 seconds is when the Photomatix version finished. Okay, so probably about now, I would have already been done in Photomatix, as you already saw. And here, I'm still waiting. Now, if you don't know much about Aurora HDR, this software was created by a company called MacFun and by a very famous HDR photographer by the name of Trey Ratcliffe. Most people know who Trey Ratcliffe is. Most people hate him or love him. There's really no gray area. I think he's a great guy. I've shot with him before in Atlanta when he visited here. And he's a very great guy, great photographer. But this software is just, in my opinion, needs a lot of work. I'm not going to say it's terrible because it's a very pretty interface. I mean, there's a lot you can do with it. Photomatix is very limited as far as advanced features, but it works, right? It works and it's very fast. So here we go. A new version of the Aurora HDR plugin is available. Yeah, that's okay. So I never really used the plugin. What it's telling me is that I have an updated version of Aurora, but I don't have the most updated version of the plugin, which means if I wanted to open Aurora from Lightroom. But I never do that. I always export them, like I told you, to Bridge here and then drag them in from Bridge. So right now I am updated on Aurora, and let's just confirm that. So let's do Aurora HDR Pro check for updates, and it says you're up to date. So I'm on version 1.2.2. Okay, so let's go ahead and make this full screen. All right, so it's fair, like Photomatix. All right, so here we are. So again, like I said, it's a very pretty interface. Okay, it's got a lot of things going for it, a lot of potential. You can even do layers, which is great. So you can do your own brushing with your Wacom tablet in here without really needing to go to Photoshop, except for final touch-ups like cloning or some noise reduction or things like that, even though this software has pretty decent noise reduction. So I want to start out by saying this. It's got a lot of potential, and I think it will get better. As of right now, in 2016, June of 2016 specifically, I do not use Aurora HDR Pro for my professional workflow, and I don't use it. The biggest reason is because it's just slow. Let me give you an example, okay? So let's start doing some of the same stuff we were doing with Photomatix, okay? Let's just start with some random preset. Okay, first off, I just clicked on a preset, and see this little orange loading bar up here? It just keeps shooting across the top of the screen. I want you to follow my mouse in a second. You'll see this orange loading bar. And it just now gave me the preset, okay? And this isn't some crazy photograph. This is a 21 megapixel photo. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on the next preset, and here's the little orange loading bar again, taking forever. Now, my computer is an iMac 5K with 32 gigabytes of RAM and a solid-state hard drive. Okay, so I'm not running some old, 5-year-old computer. My computer is very fast, very up-to-date, still takes forever. So, okay, so here we go. So now let's mess with some of these tools to just play around. And look, I move one slider, and look what happens. This little orange progress bar shows up again. It just now made the change. Okay, after one slider. So now let's do another change. Let's just move the whites up. Oh look, surprise, surprise. Orange loading bar. Here we go again. So as you can see, I shoot professionally, so I have to have these photos out and on my print gallery, out to clients, out to companies. I can't be waiting 10 seconds to move one slider to see how it affects my image. So I still either use Photoshop, where I'm doing 32-bit HDRs, which I'll make a video on, by the way, or else I'm just blending them together with a Wacom tablet, or I'm fine using Photomatix sometimes because Photomatix is very fast. It's very snappy. It doesn't slow me down. Aurora HDR slows me down so much. So here's the worst part about Aurora. Let me show you. So let's say that I'm happy right now, right? I've just finished my processing. I'm happy with this photo. I'm ready to just check final details. So I'm going to zoom in here with this little magnifying glass. Look what happens. The second I hit zoom, all of my changes, all of my edits go away. Everything that I've done during the post-processing has just been eliminated. I have to wait for this orange progress bar to load again to add back all of the changes that I've made. And it's still loading and still loading. And I'm just trying to, quickly check details, make sure there's no artifacting, no noise before I do an export. And I'm still waiting. It's probably already been, who knows, 8 to 10 seconds, and I'm still just waiting to see. Here we go. Finally, right? I mean, is that not the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen for a professional piece of software that costs $100? So I'm going to zoom in again. As you can see, look, the second I zoom in, all of the changes I've made so far completely go away, and I have to wait for this orange loading bar again. Here we go. So the basic thing to take away from this is, if you have the time to wait, if you want to watch like all 8 Harry Potter movies or the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy while you're editing one photo, then go for it. Aurora HDR Pro is totally for you, and that's great. If you're like me and you like, snappy softwares, quick processing, you want to be able to edit, 2 or 3 photos in a couple of hour span, well, then I would do Photomatix or Photoshop, or even Lightroom has an HDR option now. Lightroom's HDR option is not very good, but anything is better than this. I mean, look, it's still doing whatever this orange bar is doing. I don't like it. It's really annoying. There we go. Finally loading my settings again. So I just wanted you to see this, because for some reason, everything that MacFun and Trey Radcliffe say about this software say that it's getting like raving reviews, and these reviews are just 5 stars everywhere, and everyone loves this software. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, how is this possible? Did I get some crazy version? So here's kind of a funny backstory of this. When I got this, when I first purchased this, maybe about 2 weeks into it, okay, they had already released an update. And I thought, okay, great. They're fixing some of the bugs. This is going to be good. They're fixing some of the speed issues. And it actually said fixing some speed issues, whatever. And so it did nothing. I'm pretty sure their updates literally do nothing. So I contacted the Stuck in Customs team, which is Trey Radcliffe's business. And I said, I don't know if I need to go to MacFun or if I need to go to you guys or whatever. And they said, yeah, let me get you over to MacFun and like the specific Aurora HDR tech team. And I said, okay, great. That's great. They have this like specific Aurora HDR division of people that can help with tech issues. So I explained my problem. I said, look, I'm having these insanely bad load time issues. The processing is so slow. Everything about the software is slow. I would really like a refund, but what can you do for me? Can you maybe help me figure out if it's something with the software? Is it, some kind of corrupt file maybe? I need a different download. And so here's what the email said back, okay, from these people. They said, basically in a nutshell, can you please send me the raw files that you're trying to put through this software? And I said, yeah, great. So I sent them the 3 raw files that I was doing, and they said, okay, so it seems that the best solution for you is that you should shrink your window to the smallest it can go, and that you should close out of every other application you're running in the background, and that should help a little. And so I'm sitting here thinking to myself, this customer service backend, this tech team of Aurora HDR Pro tells me that the best solution for this software that is Retina display ready, by the way. I have a 27-inch 5K display, and they market this software as being Retina display ready, 5K ready, whatever, okay? And now my only solution is to shrink my window that I have on this beautiful screen to the smallest, teeny tiny little thing so that it runs faster. So let's do that, okay? Let's do that. So let's get back in here to Aurora. So I said, you know what? Just for the heck of it, I'm going to try it. I'm going to shrink it to its smallest screen, which is terrible, by the way. If you can see this, would this not be the most annoying thing in the world to work on? A screen this tiny when I have this 27-inch iMac screen? Okay, so I shrunk it. And I said, okay, well, you know what? For the heck of it, I'm going to try his suggestion. And as you can see, by the way, the orange bar is already loading again. And all my settings have gone away. So I hope you can see my point. I shrunk the screen to the smallest it can go, and look, it still happens. I'm going to zoom in, and all my settings go away. I don't know if you can hear this, but the fans on my computer just started going insane. And so my good friend Joseph and I, we talk about this software all the time. We're like, oh my gosh, an update just came out. Did it do anything? Right? And me and Joseph will text back and forth, and he's like, yes, it did something. I'm like, what did it do? He's like, the minimize button is a darker shade of yellow. We're like, oh, great. It's a very worthy update. So, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say. I'm not the kind of person that like hates on softwares, because I admire Trey Radcliffe for coming out with this software. Again, I think it has a lot of potential. It will spit out good results if you have the patience, again, to go through like 8 Harry Potter movies for one photo. But I don't have that kind of time, because when you're a photographer and you're working on stuff, time is money most of the time when you're working on this kind of stuff for clients to get out to a company or whatever. And I just can't handle these kind of slow load times. So I was very disappointed with their solution of just shrinking the screen. So I just, basically said I tried it. It didn't work. I never heard back from them. And to this day, I'm still waiting on some better update to happen. But until that day, I can't use Aurora HDR Pro professionally, because it's just too slow. So I hope that was a decent comparison, because I haven't seen any comparison on the internet about this. I've only seen certain photographers that are friends with Trey Radcliffe just go on and on about this software, about how amazing it is. But let me tell you something to be aware of, because there are a lot of videos about Aurora HDR Pro on YouTube already. And what you'll notice is Trey Radcliffe and MacFun and whoever does these reviews, almost all of them drag in JPEG files, shrunken down JPEG files that they merge into the software. It still lags a little bit, but it's much faster, because they know that it's very slow with RAW files and very slow with TIFF files. So they drag in these these shrunken down compressed JPEGs to make it appear very, very fast. So again, my good friend Joseph and I were like, that's like Houdini style. That's like literally like an illusionist. They're like doing something over here, right? Like, oh yes, look how fast it is. But like over here with this hand, they're like, yeah, we're actually using JPEGs. So it's like this whole, I don't know. I'm not going to say marketing scam, because again, I just don't think they know how bad it is. Who knows? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe MacFun and Trey Radcliffe have their own like admin versions and it's way faster. But regardless, I'm very unhappy with it. And I don't think that they should be marketing it as the best HDR photography software out there, because the reality is it's not. The best analogy of it is that this is prettier and Photomatix isn't so pretty, but it's kind of like Aurora HDR is a Ferrari, right? Very pretty, but there's no engine. So I can't really drive it. I can't go anywhere. It's kind of useless, but it's pretty if it just sits there. But Photomatix is like the old beat up truck that's been running and been loyal to me for like 40 years. It'll never break down on me. So that's why I use Photomatix, because it's loyal and it'll never break down. It never has let me down. It's great, very fast. So anyway, I hope you guys like that comparison. I know it kind of drug on a little bit, but I wanted to be very efficient about it, because I'm fighting a case here. In case you guys are thinking about purchasing this software, just beware before you spend the money. It's got some work. It's got some kinks to be sorted out. So as always, thank you guys again so much for watching my videos. This will be a great conversation in the comments. I look forward to talking to all of you, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. If you would like to stay up to date on all of my latest photography videos and adventures, click the big subscribe button below. And if you would like to find out more about me and how to become a great photographer, visit my website at findingmiddleearth.com.